Alright, today we're going to be looking at two-column proofs, and we kind of looked at this a little bit on Friday, but we're going to continue it today. Just remember, a proof is a convincing argument using deductive reasoning. Alright, I'm going to go from one statement to the other. What can I conclude about each statement that leads me to a new statement? And then I'm going to just basically justify each of those statements that I make. Alright, so with a two-column proof, I basically set this up in two columns. That's why it's called a two-column proof. In one column, I have the statements that I'm going to make, and in the other column, I have the reasons that allow me to make those statements. Alright, and the goal here is to get to the proven statement. So basically, what I do when I do a two-column proof is I'm going to start with this statement that's given, and I'm going to make conclusions about that statement. So I'm going to make another statement based on that, and another statement based on that. I'm going to keep making statements until the statement I make is the one to be proven. Alright? And what happens is, if I keep making statements and each of those statements is justified using my definitions or my postulates or my properties, then I can conclude that the last statement is true. Okay? So, when I look at this, I'm just going to start with the given. I'm going to label each of these. I'll call this 1. It says the measure of angle 1 equals the measure of angle 2. Alright? And the reason for that is because it was given. I was told that that is true. Alright, so I start with my given, and now I'm going to make another conclusion based on that. Well, when I look at this thing, I know kind of where I want to lead, or kind of where I want to go with this thing, the measure of angle AEC equaling the measure of angle DEB. I can't quite get there yet, but when I look at angle 1 and angle 2 and see some of the relationships that are involved here, I could easily say that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle BEC is equal to the measure of angle AEC. And I know that that's true because that's my angle addition postulate. Alright, so the reason I can say that is because that's my angle addition postulate. And we just abbreviate that as something like angle add. Alright, along those same lines, and since this is going to be justified by the same reason, I'm just going to include it in this step. I could say that the measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle BEC is equal to the measure of angle BED, or DEB. I'll state it that way since that's the way it's written in my prove statement. And again, that's the same reason, that's angle addition. So I'm going to include all of that in step 2. All right, it's just an easy way to abbreviate this so there's a little bit less to write. And that's why I label these things and number them. All right, so now I know that each of those statements is true because of angle addition. All right. The next thing that I could say then step 3 here is I could say that something like the measure of, or what I could do is I could say, okay, well, then that means the measure of angle BEC is equal to itself. And that's my reflexive property. And that one's kind of a strange one. If you forget that step, it's not really a big deal for now, but those are some of the little details we want to really utilize here. And so when we say that that thing is equal to itself, and then through substitution, I could then say, well, something like this, that the measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle BEC is equal to the measure of angle AEC. And I can say that because in my very first step, the given, I said that these two things were equal, so I'm essentially taking this guy and substituting it in right here from step 2. Okay? So I can use substitution to justify that step. And now from here, I can say that in number 5, the measure of angle DEB is equal to the measure of angle AEC. And again, I can say that by substitution as well, because right here, look at this step. Here, this thing is equal to this guy, so I can substitute that in right here in its place. Okay? And so that's why I've kind of gone through each of these little steps. So now I've done substitution again. And really, it's a different set of substitution, so that's why I label it separately from the previous. But now that's the statement I wanted to prove. And so really, step 3, I didn't really need this time. I thought that maybe I was going to subtract that from each side, but that's just extra information I didn't need. And that's the thing about proofs. We know where we want to go with this stuff, and there's a lot of things that we could say, but not all of them are necessarily useful for us to say. All right? So as long as we can make another statement and justify that statement and eventually make it to this statement that we want to prove, we're in good shape. And if you have a couple extra statements that kind of lead to nowhere along the way, that's all right. We might want to backtrack and kind of figure those things out as we go. All right. And so these take a little bit of time to get used to in terms of just getting a feel for them in terms of where we want to go with these statements. Okay. Hope that was helpful, and you're going to have a worksheet here coming at you to practice some of these things. Whatever you do not finish is homework. All right.